All right, everyone. So we have a pretty interesting story here from ewrestlingnews.com. The headline is Report WWE is looking to put AEW out of business. AEW World's End is set for December 27th at the Now Arena in Chicago, but WWE may be planning to counter program the event with John Cena's final match. According to a report from Brian Alvarez, Cena's farewell bout was originally penciled in for early December at WWE Saturday Night's main event. However, internal discussions are reportedly underway about shifting it to December 27th to go head to head with AEW's pay per view event. Dave Meltzer elaborated, noting that the current plan could see Cena's last match move from December 13th to December 27th. He said, "This is certainly the story going around. They wanted to move from December 13th to December 27th. WWE's strategy is part of a larger push to hinder AEW's chances of securing a higher value media rights renewal." He added that WWE is actively working to elevate TNA Wrestling as the clear number two promotion, one they can control, in order to box AEW out of long term growth. He stated, "They just want this guy, Tony Khan, out of the box. If the numbers stay good, he's going to get a renewal at a much bigger number, and that would make AEW incredibly profitable. They feel they need to make sure this is the last contract." As we previously reported here on EWN, WWE is looking to book John Cena versus Brock Lesnar for an unannounced pay-per-view event on September 20th, positioned directly opposite AEW All Out 2025. All right, so I found this story very interesting, and there's two things that if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you would know everything that was said right here was exactly what we predicted, right? The entirety of the TNA deal between WWE and TNA was because they understood that if you have this kind of, so you have WWE, which is the clear one, and then you have AEW and TNA battling for second, but in reality, AEW, right, is has far more of a chance, and I don't even want to say chance like they can to overtake WWE because they're not going to do that, but they're just a much bigger threat at number two, right? TNA back in the day was, it was clearly the number two, but now AEW is kind of the one that's viewed as the actual rival promotion. So when they do this deal with TNA, the whole point of it was to build up TNA to a point where they could beat AEW, but understanding that the reason they got there was because of their relationship with WWE, meaning the kind of cross promotion and all of that stuff allowed them to do that, and that would need to continue for them to stay there. So that basically effectively boxes out AEW. And we predicted that months ago. As soon as I heard about the deal between WWE and TNA, I said, makes a lot of sense. Makes complete sense for both sides because in TNA's view, right, TNA is like, look, being second to WWE doesn't mean we can't make a shit ton of money. And because of all the talent in wrestling, you're still going to get these big name stars that are heading to TNA when their contracts aren't renewed by WWE. You're going to have stars going to TNA trying to get back into WWE. You're going to have WWE stars going over to TNA. There are so many things that could happen, right? But WWE knows, okay, TNA will always be second. In AEW's situation, it's not that it's impossible for them to ever do it, but in reality, AEW will never overtake WWE, especially now. WWE is just too big, right? It just has too much of an ability to make sure that they continue to have the best wrestlers. And it's not that they have all the best wrestlers. There are a ton of talented people in TNA and in AEW. But the bottom line is, if there was a star that was the biggest in wrestling, WWE would be able to get them to come. That's just the simple truth, right? Because they have way more money to offer. They could just offer way more than AEW, and they have the ability, because they have so much money, to, withstand storms that AEW wouldn't be able to. And now they're trying to say, look, we're going to actively, now that we've made the deal with TNA, we're going to actively attempt to hurt their profitability by going head to head with them. Maybe it will work out. I will say that I feel like AEW is a tough kind of opponent here in this sense, because AEW has a group of fans who are very hardcore, right? And they're going to be supporting AEW. So it's one of those things, almost, I mean, I'm not comparing it to ECW, but similarly to ECW, where WWE really doesn't have much, they can't really go after AEW all that hard because the fans that are there are the fans that are there, right? It certainly means that they probably aren't ever going to overtake WWE, but it's going to be tough for them to really run AEW out of business because they just don't have those fans. Now, what putting the retirement match for Cena, what putting that head to head will be, well, if there's any of those kind of fans that watch both, right? My guess is if the retirement match is going on, they're going to choose to watch that. So maybe that's part of the thinking. I just don't know how much of this is going to work out. We will see. I'm not necessarily a business expert, so I could be dead wrong, right? Very well could be dead wrong on this. I just see this kind of shaking out where, because even if I was considering giving, let's say I was one of these, places that could give AEW the money, because that's where a lot of the money comes from. Look what WWE has done, right? They've been able to sell off parts of their content library, so the PLEs, the actual content library. We'll see where that ends up. SmackDown, Raw, they were able to give these to places, right, and for these massive deals. So what AEW wants is they want a media rights renewal, right? They want a media rights deal that's going to pay them a lot and help them with profitability. So if I'm the company that's going to be giving this media rights renewal and giving this money, if I'm that company and I see, WWE trying to put AEW out and going head to head, and WWE beats AEW in Cena's retirement tour match, I'm not going to view that as, okay, well, clearly AEW can't stack it. It's not worth renewing because of this one event. I just don't see that being the case. If I was one of those companies, if I was considering renewing AEW and I realized, okay, it had less ratings because John Cena's retirement match was going on the other program, I would call that an outlier, right? Or an outlier, right? That's what I would say about that. So I just don't know how much this is actually going to work. To me, AEW has its kind of hardcore fans. It's never going to overtake WWE, but it does have that audience that loves it, and that's why they're going to make some sort of money. But the deal with TNA, I do think, was a brilliant stroke of genius from the WWE, because if there is any chance of, WWE being able to kind of hurt AEW in this sense, then I'll tell you, that's how you do it, right? What you do is you're the top dog, you take the third guy, you move him to second, and now what you're really doing is WWE is off in a distant first, and you're having a battle between TNA and AEW now for that second place. And that really creates, havoc, right? It really creates havoc for AEW and makes it worse. But once again, they have a hardcore fan base. If they put on a good product, then you could see some form of success. So we'll be following this story because, like I said, I could be dead wrong on this. I do not suspect in any way, shape, or form that this is actually going to work unless they did, it's like they're kind of, unless they chose to literally bring the fight to them in every situation, right? So whenever AEW has a live show or whenever AEW is on TV, WWE put on their show. Maybe in that case, right, you could really do some damage. But I think WWE knows, is it really worth doing that, right? Is it really worth, you're almost elevating AEW to the size of WWE if you're kind of like, yeah, we're going to be constantly fighting you. Well, now you're making this into a war, just like the Monday Night Wars, when in reality, it really isn't, right? This isn't a situation where WCW is beating WWE for 83 weeks. So, I don't know. I just think this is one of those things where they're trying to do it, but my guess is they'll probably fail and then just kind of get bored with it and just continue with what they're doing with TNA in hurting AEW in that sense. So, put your thoughts in the comment section below. We will see you next time.